Hello and welcome to our next step in our journey through Twelfth Night as we reach the end of Act 1. So we're into Act 1, Scene 5, as we see. There we go. And again, like, comment, subscribe. Check out my other videos. You know the drill. Like a very experienced dentist, you know the drill. Anyway, let's carry on. And jokes are a theme because in this scene we are introduced to Feste. So we have Mariah here as well, also introduced to Mariah. And no, we're not actually introduced to Mariah. Mariah we've met before, but anyway. Feste and Mariah speaking at the start here. So we have Shakespeare again starting in media res as well, and the idea of halfway through conversation, Mariah's not going to be making excuses for Feste's absence. So, bit of context, of course, you can go into this in more detail, but a fool is like a licensed comedian. They were allowed through medieval times and into the Tudor period, and then now into the it was still technically is the Tudor period when the play is set because of Elizabeth I. But all the way through, you have the idea of what effectively we think of as a jester, and they were allowed to make jokes and get away with things that other people wouldn't get away with. That was part of their job. They did often, like modern comedians, often tread a fine line between even what was acceptable for them as well. But one of the things Feste's not supposed to have done, even though he's referred to as fool here, and he's been away and he's not meant to do that. His job's meant to be with Olivia. He's meant to be part of Olivia's household, and he's meant to be there. So Mariah saying, "You better tell me where you've been, otherwise I'm not going to be making any excuses for you. He that is well hanged in this world needs to fear no colours. Make that good, he shall have none to hear. A good Lenten answer, I can tell thee where that saying was born of I fear no colours. In the wars, and you may be bold to say in your foolery." So this could imply that Feste has been travelling around with the military or something. But anyway, whatever it is, whatever the reason for it is, the main reason is that Feste is being presented by Shakespeare here as being very casual and dismissive about his time away. He's not being very clear about what he's been doing, and he's not really that bothered about what people think of him for it. So whatever he's been doing and why he's been absent. And actually, even the reference to colours itself could be an ironic reference to the motley that jesters would wear, that fools would wear, as in the multicoloured costumes. So it could actually be an indirect reference to that as well. Well, God give them wisdom that have it, and those that are fools, let them use their talents. With Feste, he is, as I say, his name is Feste. And with Feste, Shakespeare establishes one of his real character archetypes that he has, which is of the wise fool. And you see it in other Shakespeare plays as well, but this is your first one, really. The role was probably written for it definitely was. It was written for a comic actor called Robert Armin, who was a contemporary of Shakespeare's, and he was a famous comedian of the time. And Robert Armin, between him and Shakespeare, developed this character of the wise fool. So even though Feste is effectively a jester, is a comedian, he tells jokes, there is wisdom in what he says, and you see this in other Shakespeare plays as well, such as King Lear, which you might have studied as well, and others. Anyway, and then Feste again, and Shakespeare by extension, not afraid of doing more sexual innuendo as well. Many a good hanging prevents a bad marriage. You might have to deconstruct that slightly to get to the rude joke, but if you start thinking about it, a good hanging sounds very similar to a more modern phrase, good hanging, good for well, hanging tongue. Again, I'm treading around the words carefully because of YouTube, but work out what he's implying there. So there's more bawdy humour there. People don't always notice it. Then this also foreshadows something for later on in the play. If Sir Toby would leave drinking, thou wert as witty a piece of Eve's flesh as any in Illyria. So this is, foreshadowing Sir Toby and Maria. I'm really careful of spoilers, but anyway, I don't want to spoil things too much. But anyway, it's foreshadowing something important later on. Come back to this video later on, then it'll make sense then. But you can work it out. Anyway, then we have the fool here. He's got a chance here he needs to get back into Olivia's good books. So this scene is broken up into different phases. So you've got this bit really with Feste and Maria, and you could argue that the next bit is still part of this same phase where it's introducing Feste and also introducing Malvolio, another important character introduced in this scene as well. And this is like phase one. But anyway, he's speaking in aside, so it's not exactly the same as a soliloquy, but it's an aside. He's talking to himself. We will hear what he's saying. And then I always like this because for what's his Quinapolis, better a witty fool than a foolish wit. So this is an example of anti-metaboly. So you can see, look how clever Shakespeare is here. Look at this technique. So witty fool, foolish wit. So you can see it's transposing adjective, noun, witty fool. Actually, fool there is capitalised. That's not capitalised in every edition. In this version here, that implies he's talking about himself as a witty fool. Okay, never seen that before. All right. But anyway, don't always see that capitalised as far as I can remember, but it's a minor point. For what says Quinapolis, this could be a variety of things. I think my favourite explanation of this is that, jesters would have those little sticks with a miniature version of themselves, and I like the idea that the stick is actually Quinapolis is the name of his stick, and Quinapolis, you then do a little puppetry thing with it, better witty fool than a foolish wit. And I like that idea. It seems to fit in with it more, but I've never seen it performed like that. I've seen multiple versions. I've never seen it performed like that at all. So, but I like to imagine that's what it is, because they did have those sticks. So, to the idea of God bless thee, lady. So, the polite and respectful salutation of Feste. We have Olivia ordering her instant response is take the fool away. So an imperative. Again, this links to Olivia being a strong head of the household. She's in charge. She's decisive. Shakespeare's obviously, I think, echoing Elizabeth I as a strong, decisive woman. I think there's elements of Elizabeth I coming through and Olivia there with this, but I mean, not just in this line. I mean, that would be exaggerating the point, but you get what I mean. You'd have to have more evidence than that. There's lots of other things you could talk about, which I'm not going to do right now. Do you not hear, fellows? Take away the lady. What you have here is what a lot of modern comedians do, is exploiting a sense of pragmatics. And you might know about pragmatics, you might not, but pragmatics is about context and implied meanings. And the idea is a lot of jokes will exploit with taking things literally or talking at cross purposes. And Feste uses this kind of comedic logic, or Shakespeare has, Feste used this comedic logic to effectively, Feste talks himself out of this difficult situation and gets back in Olivia's favour. So anything that's mended is but patched, virtue that transgresses is but patched with sin, and sin that amends is but patched with virtue. So this is more anti-metaboly here as well. Shakespeare would have known all of these, well, not all of these techniques. Some techniques are modern, but a term like anti-metaboly he'd be aware of because he would have learned it at school. And then the lady bade take away the fool. Therefore, I say again, take her away. So he said, I'm not the fool, you're a fool. Misprision in the highest degree, Lady Cuculus non facit monachum. That's as much as I say, I wear not motley in my brain. That means the cow doesn't make the monk. So don't judge things by appearances. And that also, what Shakespeare did, if you're struggling to understand Shakespeare, it does take a while to tune into the language. But one of the things that Shakespeare does is because in his time, his plays and other playwrights actually as well, they were writing more thinking about audience listening to the play rather than watching it. There was a visual element definitely, but the primary consideration was people listening to it rather as you're doing listening to me now. And even though it may not sound like it, there's certain things I'm doing. I try to be mindful that I've got a listening audience, and I've got to think of that kind of thing. So in terms of how Shakespeare is writing, he will repeat the same image, sometimes in different words. He won't repeat it word for word, but he will use a new image. He might use another metaphor. It might be a completely different technique to reinforce the same idea. And as you're listening to something, that helps you take it in and process it. And I've been doing the same thing. As I'm explaining it, I'm going through multiple examples, aren't I? And I'm rephrasing it. And these are just standard techniques that you would use. So Motley, that is the clothing that jesters wear. So despite his appearances, he's actually really clever. And that is, Shakespeare is establishing Feste's personality very quickly, or his character very quickly here. Give me leave to prove you a fool. Can you do it dexterously, good Madonna? Make your proof. I must catechize you for it. To catechize is religious instruction through question and answer. They also used to teach children like it as well, particularly in terms of with private tutors in rich houses. They would often catechize, but religious instruction was often through teaching through question and answer. So that's what it is. So he's now going to teach her a lesson effectively. My mouse of virtue answer me. Well, so for one of other highness, I'll bide your proof. So he goes through what would happen in catechism is to talk through a hypothetical scenario, and you do question and answer, and you would learn through exploring that. So this is what happens here. Good Madonna, why mournest thou, good fool? For my brother's death, I think his soul is in hell, Madonna. I know his soul is in heaven, fool. The more fool, Madonna, to mourn for your brother's soul being in heaven. Take away the fool, gentlemen. Few things to talk about here. Let's go for the first one, and the first most important one, which is Feste uses this logic of saying, well, you must be a fool if you're mourning for your brother if you're certain that he's in heaven. So why are you still sad? If you're certain that he's in heaven, you should be happy. And he does win her over with this logic. Also, if anyone's confused about Madonna reference here, this is Shakespeare using an example of antonomasia, which is giving a person, you're addressing a person by a name that's associated with a figure from the Bible or literature or maybe ancient Greece and ancient Rome. And it can be used sarcastically, it can be used respectfully, it can be used in a variety of ways. And in this one, Madonna is referring to the Virgin Mary, and so really it's like a hyperbolically respectful, still nickname. He's calling her that, but he's using that as a sign of respect actually. But it is kind of hyperbolic as well. Hope that makes sense. Then Olivia seems quite amused by Feste's clever logic here. Now Malvolio he's the steward. He's a steward. He is the head of he's not the head of the household, but he's the head of the servants, basically. He's the top-ranking servant. And Malvolio and Feste, Shakespeare sets as foil characters, as in they are opposite. They are very opposite characters. They're set apart. So Feste is intelligent, perceptive, humorous. He's very intelligent. Malvolio is very stuck up. He's very reserved, very judgmental, humourless. And in the play, we tend to laugh at Malvolio rather than anything witty that Malvolio says himself. So there's an instant contrast between the two characters there as well. So Malvolio, infirmity that decays the wise doth ever make the better fool. So the things Malvolio says, at least superficially, seem wise. But Feste will always have a more intelligent counter for whatever Malvolio says. God send you, sir, a speedy infirmity for the better increasing your folly. So, hope God sends you some kind of illnesses as you age, so then you'll become more foolish. Then we've got, I marvel your ladyship takes delight in such a barren rascal. Malvolio is very dismissive of Feste's comedy. I saw him put down the other day with an ordinary fool that has no more brain than a stone. I can't help but wonder if this is meant to be maybe Sir Andrew, or maybe it could have been in Sir Toby. I don't know. I've no real evidence for that. And when I sit here thinking about it, maybe that doesn't quite add up in terms of the timeline of the play. It's something I'd have to look into a bit more. But whoever it is, it doesn't matter. But he's seen Feste with people he considers idiots laughing at his jokes. Look you now, he's out of his guard already. Unless you laugh and minister occasion to him, he is gagged. So say if you don't laugh at his jokes, he has no power. His humour doesn't work, does it? If no one's laughing at him, he's completely powerless. I protest I take these wise men that crow so at these set kind of fools no better than the fool's Zane is. I love that word Zane is. Zanies are the comedy stooges. So if you think of like a group of clowns, there'll be one who's getting the custard down his pants and custard pie in the face and all of those things. So they would be like the fool zanies. So saying that these wise men who find this kind of comedy so funny, I think they're just like comedy stooges. They're idiots. So Malvolio is no time for Feste's comedy as well. And again, remember context of the play, 12th night. It's a festival, 12 days of Christmas. At the end of the 12 days of Christmas, it's a big festival in Shakespeare's time. It's a time of jokes and fun, and you are meant to take things more lightly. And so Malvolio is set as a more antagonistic character. He's not really villainous, but he's definitely set apart from the fun and hijinks of the season. He's deliberately framed in that way as a character, as someone who's dismissive of these things and not interested in any of them at all. Then you are sick of self-love, Malvolio, and taste with a distempered appetite. So this is Olivia saying you're too full of yourself, basically. You're too self-important. To be generous, guiltless, and a free disposition is to take those things for bird bolts that you deem cannon bullets. So this is deliberate contrast here. The deliberate use of antithesis, actually. Bird bolts and cannon bullets, like they're projectiles. So bird bolts would be things that you'd fire at birds to maybe not even kill them, just to scare them away, like probably from what Americans call a slingshot, but should be referred to as a catapult. And yeah, but anyway, I'm quibbling over terms there. Slingshot's something different, really. But anyway, so there is no slander in an allowed fool. So this is there's no harm in a fool. A fool is meant to tell jokes. That's his job. Don't be such a grump, Malvolio, effectively. And even Malvolio's name as well. If you're talking about patronyms in the play, Feste obviously sounds like festival, and it's linking to that. Malvolio, actually roughly translated in Italian, is going to be like bad thought or ill will, if you think of it like that. Anyway, so different phase of the scene now. Maria announces that there's a young gentleman wants to see her, and we know this is actually not really a gentleman. It's Viola in disguise in her persona of Cesario. And if it be a suit from the Count, I am sick, or not at home, what you will, to dismiss it. Malvolio exits. So she's saying, just give me some excuse. I'm ill. I'm not in. I don't want to talk to him. It's a message from Orsino. I'm not interested. Then we have Sir Toby arrive. He's completely drunk. So we have Sir Toby's been talking at the gate to Cesario, as in Viola. Famous line here, 'tis a gentleman here, a plague of these pickled herring. Pickled herring, you might think, that's not very significant, what's going on? He's been eating pickled fish. Well, it's a typical pub snack of the era. So someone who eats a lot of pickled herring, he's been at the pub and eating, There's still pubs out there where you can buy this kind of thing, but probably not many. But I don't know if you can get pickled herring. You probably could. There must be somewhere that sells it. Anyway, there's some comedy through how Shakespeare sets up Sir Toby's personality because he's so drunk. And this actually does link to the theme of perception of reality as well, because Sir Toby will often mishear what someone else is saying, and then Shakespeare generates some comedy off of this. How come so early by this lethargy, as in you're tired out? It's because he's been drinking, obviously. He mishears it. Lechery? I defy lechery. And that's basically being pervy, lustful and pervy. I'm not like that. And he said, there's one at the gate, as he means there's someone here. And so Toby's done a great job, I'm being sarcastic, of welcoming Cesario there. What a drunken man like fool, like a drowned man, a fool and a madman. One draught above heat makes him a fool, the second mads him, and a third drowns him. So there's a sense of incrementum there, as in build-up, of saying, like, as more drunk you get, a little bit drunk, you're a fool. So a little bit more drunk, and you're mad. Really, really drunk, you're as good as drowned. So there's wisdom in the fool's words here, excess. And actually, yeah, that's another theme of the play about excess. You think back to Orsino, Music Be the Food of Love, and you think of the excess there. And then you can think about Sir Toby with his alcohol consumption. He is but mad, yet Madonna, and the fool shall look to the madman, which just sounds very, very wise words as well. The fool is going to look after the madman. So that's not necessarily the best person on paper to look after him. However, Feste is very sensible, really. So Malvolio re-enters and says that the visitor is refusing to leave. He's going to not stand for any excuse to not speak to Olivia. This is always interesting, this bit. So what kind of man is he? Why of mankind? I don't know if this is because Shakespeare, in contrast to Feste, Shakespeare is presenting Malvolio as being not very bright. I've always wondered if that's as simple as that. What kind of man is he? Why of mankind? It's played in a variety of ways. Sometimes as Malvolio being dismissive and not interested in who the man is at the gate. It sometimes seems to be performed like that, but I think it's maybe just to show Malvolio being not very bright, to be honest. What manner of man? Of very ill manner. He'll speak with you, will or no. And again, that could just be another misunderstanding as well. So what manner of man? What's he like? What type of man is he? Was he... It would imply, is it a farmer? Is it a gentleman? Is it a lord? Is it a clergyman? And it just says, he's very rude. What personage in years is he? Not yet old enough for a man, nor young enough for a boy. So this is interesting, the idea of liminal spaces, of being between different states. As a squash is before 'tis a peas cord, or a codling which is almost an apple. Then, so we get this idea of the Count's man, as in Cesario, being very youthful. And whatever Malvolio's lack of intelligence may be, the description that he provides Olivia is enough to intrigue her to ask to see the visitor. Then we have some business here with give me my veil, come throw it over my face. So again, this links to, appearance versus reality. And in some ways as well, like the theme of duplication as well, because Mariah and Olivia are going, it's mainly from Olivia's brain doing this, are going to play a little bit of a trick on the visitor here. So Viola doesn't know, actually, who Olivia is. The Honourable Lady of the House, which is, so this is, there's two of them on stage, going to be similarly dressed, probably, in a normal production of it. So the visiting Cesario, as obviously Viola, doesn't really know who's the noblewoman she should be addressing. Speak to me, I shall answer for her, your will. So this implies that this is actually a servant. Olivia is posing as a servant there, but of course you've got Cesario posing as a servant in this scene. You see, it's all very clever. Most radiant, exquisite, and unmatchable beauty, I pray you tell me if this be the lady of the house, for I never saw her. I would be loath to cast away my speech. For besides it is excellently well penned, I have taken great pains to con it. And this actually links to the idea again of performance, which we've talked about before. There is a running theme of the play about performing. Obviously, most notably performing a gender role is a big part of it. But even just in terms of references to ideas and concepts from the theatre, little more than I've studied, the question's out of my part. So about learning lines. So sometimes this play will hint at crossing what we call the fourth wall, and then it actually will go through it later on in the play as well, but not radically, but just mildly. Are you a comedian? Know my profound heart. Again, that's often used like we might today in a sarcastic way as well. But it also links to Feste's comedy earlier on in the scene as well. We have a reference here to periods of all things. Is not that time of moon with me to make one in so skipping a dialogue. The time of moon is a euphemistic reference to a period. So she's again, you could say it's drawing on like gender stereotypes here of Shakespeare's time. Will you hoist sail, sir? Here lies your way. No good swabber. This actually is this is more nautical lexis. It's all words to do with. It just really extends the metaphor of like a sailing ship. Then we have this ironic line: "What I am and what I would are as secret as maidenhead's virginity. To your ears, divinity; to any other's profanation. Give us this place alone. We will hear this divinity." So Olivia is intrigued by. Viola is a very different type of man that she's encountered before, at least she perceives as a man. So Olivia ends up being effectively charmed by Viola's words as Cesario, which are meant to be delivered on behalf of Orsino. So as I said earlier on in my earlier videos, it's not a love triangle, it's going to get more, it's like a love knot, a love splodge. I can't remember what I said in the end. Then, 'tis beauty truly blent, whose red and white nature's own sweet and cunning hand laid on. They really like red and white because there's a link to that they'd managed to successfully breed the damask rose, which was white and red rose, and fashionably for women as well, for Elizabethan women to have very pale skin was the fashion, and they would have very like bright, what we would call lipstick. They wouldn't call it that in those days. And blusher, it would be. So red and white, they like that combination culturally as a combination there of colours. There's this, again, this extends the nautical metaphor from earlier on because it's like an inventory for a ship here. So Olivia describes her beauty as item 2 lips in different red, item 2 grey eyes with lids to them, item 1 neck, 1 chin, and so forth. Then, oh, such love could be but recompensed though you were crowned the nonpareil of beauty. That means beauty without compare. I like nonpareil, it's a great word. How does he love me? With adorations fertile, 'tis with groans that thunder love, with sighs of fire. So this is again Viola's words describing Orsino's supposed love for Olivia. Remember, Orsino thinks he's in love with Olivia, but he doesn't really understand what love is properly. And this is actually personification as well. Should have added that in earlier, sorry. Olivia says, your Lord does know my mind. I cannot love him. I suppose him virtuous, know him noble, of great estate, of fresh and stainless youth. So actually, a lot of productions as well, you normally see Olivia as being really dismissive of Orsino and being quite hostile to him. But here in the play, if you're looking at the words at face value, you can see that she seems to recognise that he's perfectly suitable on paper maybe, but she just doesn't love him. That's just not her choice. Yeah, I cannot love him. It might not have took his answer long ago. There's no real explanation of why she can't love him. And you could read into that if you want to take a perspective in terms of gender and sexuality, and you're thinking of, in this scene, Olivia is drawn to the male presenting Viola as Cesario. So is this actually thinking subtly about lesbianism in a way? Is there a theme here? Is Shakespeare touching on themes that maybe he couldn't touch on overtly in everyday life? It doesn't necessarily mean that. It's just an interpretation of it. But is that the reason? You can decide all of these things. If you think that's not a very good idea, you can ignore it. You can have your own idea on it. Also, someone could just decide, I'm just not really interested. There's something about that person I just don't like. I couldn't love that person. Just don't like. You just don't click. It could be as simple as that. But you can read into it more if you so wish. So we have next page. Let's go for the next page. What would you do? And Viola offers very or Shakespeare writing for Viola gives very poetic language to describe what if Violet was in love with Olivia, what would Violet say? Oh, sorry, I should say Cesario say. So make a willow cabin at your gate. So I'd be so determined I'd build a little house, a little willow cabin, and then I would write poems, really long poems and songs, and sing them, and holler your name to the reverberate hills, and really just to do the classic romantic courtly lover, that idea of courtly lover, that traditional romantic, like you think of like knights of old, and or someone singing under a window, a man singing under a window for a woman. This is the idea of that Viola is going for here as Cesario. You might do much. What is your parentage? So it looks here again, thinking about pragmatics, the implication is Olivia must be interested in Viola to be asking about what's your parentage. Above my fortunes, at my state as well, I am a gentleman. You can talk here about Shakespeare's use circumlocution, which is talking around something. Circumlocution is a lovely word, that one. Talking around something. We don't get the specific details, obviously, because Cesario is a constructed identity from the character of Viola. Then, get to your lord, I cannot love him, let him send no more, unless perchance you come to me again to tell me how he takes it. So Olivia devises an excuse here for Viola to come back. So like, I don't want any more messages of love. But actually though, you could come back and tell me how he's responded to my news. That would be good. It's just an excuse to see Viola, or as I say, Cesario again. Spend this for me. So offering a present. I don't want any money. Farewell, fair cruelty. That is a deliberate little pun there. Farewell, fair cruelty. And remember I said about listening audience as well. So that joke actually works better if you hear it rather. It's not a real like massive joke, but mildly amusing at least. It works better when you hear it rather than say farewell, fair cruelty. Much better when you say it rather than when you read it. What is your parentage? Above my fortunes, yet my state is well, I am a gentleman. I'll be sworn thou art. Thy tongue, thy face, thy limbs, paraphrasing there, actions and spirit do give thee fivefold blazon. Not too fast, soft. So Olivia has fallen in love, finds herself falling in love with Cesario. Even so quickly may one catch the plagues. There's a metaphor for, wow, can you actually fall in love quickly? I can't believe it. Methinks I feel this youth's perfections with an invisible and subtle stealth to creep in at mine eyes. Well, let it be. What ho, Malvolio. And then in terms of, remember Olivia had an excuse to try and get Viola to return. Well, she takes it a step further here because he left his ring behind him, would I or not? Tell him on none of it. So she pretends that there was a present given and says, gets Malvolio, so I'll run after him and give him back this ring. I don't want it. But it's actually one of her own rings anyway. And in the next, not in the next, but in the next scene. You had a glimpse of the future there. In the next act, anyway, you will find out. Yeah, definitely that's the case. Anyway, I'm rambling at the end there. Thank you for sticking with me to the end. Like, comment, subscribe, notification bell. Check out my other videos. I've got some about terms as well. Some of the ones I've talked about today as well. Thank you for listening, and I'll catch you on the next one. Goodbye. Is in the next scene. No, not in the